NICE EEM Release 8.6 includes a redesigned user experience of the web-based application for administrators called Program Manager. Program Manager empowers administrators to independently configure entities associated with programs and other EEM settings. For a general overview of Program Manager, please view the Program Manager video. This video explains one of the features of Program Manager, break and lunch templates. These templates provide you with the ability to define the parameters for how EEM should reallocate breaks and lunches on agent schedules after their schedule changes when picking up extra hours, taking time off, swapping time, or trading with another agent. For each shift length, you must specify how long breaks last and a time frame when they can occur during a shift. Since you may have many programs and sites, you may need many different sets of break and lunch rules. You can create a break and lunch template for each set of rules. To manage break and lunch templates, click Program Manager, Break and Lunch. Then select an LOB from the drop-down list. You can see the break and lunch template assigned to each program and site combination for this LOB. You can filter the list of program and site combinations displayed by selecting a program from the drop-down list. Here you can see the program, Payments Investigation, has several sites, and the sites are assigned different break and lunch templates. One site has not been assigned a break and lunch template yet. The Assigned Activity Codes column displays the activity codes assigned to the breaks of the selected template. The Apply for Time Off column indicates whether EEM should apply the rules of this template to reallocate breaks and lunches when agents take voluntary time off. Let's start by creating a break and lunch template. Click on Manage Template, then Add Template. The template has three sections: the template details, the break details, and the shift grid. The y-axis of the grid shows all the shift lengths you define for the template. The x-axis shows white cells for the duration of the shifts in 15-minute intervals. You paint these cells with the breaks and lunches for each shift. In the Template Details section, enter a name for the template that is unique for this LOB, the number of hours for the shortest shift this template will cover, the number of hours for the longest shift this template will cover, and the gap between shift lengths, 15 or 30 minutes. Once you enter these parameters, the grid updates to the template details you specified. To add a break, click Add Break. The Break Details section displays the break parameters. Click whether this break is a break, which will be colored green on the grid, or a lunch, which will be colored blue. Enter a name for the break. Enter how long this break is in minutes. Now you're ready to draw the break on each shift length the break applies to. Start drawing the break at the earliest time since the start of the shift when the break can occur. You need to click on each cell or drag on the grid the entire time range EEM can schedule the break. A sentence appears above the grid describing the break placement. For example, this break can start 1 hour 15 minutes after the start of the shift and up to 1 hour 45 minutes after the start of the shift. So the sentence reads, break start time is relative. Break should start at least 1 hour and 15 minutes and up to 1 hour and 45 minutes after the shift started. You can clear a cell at the beginning or end of the time range by clicking it again. Draw the break on every shift length the break applies to. When you finish, click Done. The grid updates with the information for each painted break. Let's see how to add additional breaks to the template. This time, we'll create a lunch. Follow the same steps to define the break details. This time, as you paint the cells, notice how the sentence above the grid updates. It indicates the range of the gap allowed between this break and the previous break on the shift. The initial gap is calculated from the first time the previous break can end until the start of this break. You must paint enough cells for the break to maintain this minimum gap for the latest occurrence possible for the previous break. In this example, for the shift length of 7 hours, lunch must start at least an hour and 30 minutes after the earliest possible end time for the first break, so you need to paint at least enough cells for the lunch to start at least an hour and 30 minutes after the latest possible end time for the first break. Here, the earliest time the first break can end is 1 hour 30 minutes after the start of the shift. So, the earliest lunch can start is 1 hour 30 minutes later, or 3 hours after the start of the shift. The latest time the first break can end is 2 hours after the start of the shift. In this case, the earliest lunch can start is 1 hour 30 minutes later, or 3 hours 30 minutes after the start of the shift. An additional cell is painted, allowing the lunch to start 1 hour 45 minutes after the end of the first break. This gives EEM more flexibility when reallocating the breaks. You may need to add a break or lunch that can start before the time range for the previous break ends. This is referred to as an overlap break. To add an overlap break, click Add Break. Then click Overlap Break. The existing breaks on the grid fade, so you can paint over cells used in another break. Enter the parameters for the break as before and paint the grid for the break. In this example, the first break is 15 minutes long and can start as early as 1 hour 30 minutes after the start of the 5-hour shift and as late as 2 hours 45 minutes after the start of the shift. The second break is a second 15-minute break that starts an hour after the first break ends. Because it can start as early as 2 hours 45 minutes after the start of the shift, which falls on top of the latest possible time for the first break, it is an overlap break. You may need to add a break at the beginning or end of a shift, such as system start or wrap up. Although other breaks are reallocated when an agent's schedule changes, these breaks at the beginning or end of a shift are not reallocated. They always stay attached to the beginning or end of a shift. An end-of-shift break can be up to 15 minutes long. If you add a break at the end of a shift and EEM cannot maintain the minimum gap specified for all possibilities of the previous break, EEM adjusts earlier breaks to fit this last break on the shift. In this example for the 6-hour shift, a 15-minute break is painted on the last 2 cells of the shift. This means the second break can occur at 2 hours or 2 hours 15 minutes after the earliest possible end time of the previous break, in this case, lunch. EEM cannot maintain this gap for later possible occurrences of lunch. If lunch ends at 4 hours after the start of the shift and a 2-hour gap is required, the shift is not long enough to schedule the break. To correct this, EEM displays a drop-down list with the possible gaps from the earliest time lunch can end until the second break, in this case, 2 hours later and 2 hours 15 minutes later. Select the possible gap you want to allow. After you click Done and Submit, EEM adjusts the earlier breaks on the shift to allow enough time between breaks to fit the last break on the shift and maintain the gaps you specified between all the breaks on the shift. Here, to allow 2 hours or 2 hours 15 minutes after all the possible occurrences for lunch, EEM removes the last cell as a possibility for lunch. Now it's possible for the second break to occur at 2 hours or 2 hours 15 minutes after all the possible times lunch can end. Because the time frame for lunch was adjusted, the time frame for the first break is no longer valid. If the first break ends at 2 hours after the start of the shift and a 1 hour 30-minute gap is required before lunch, EEM can no longer schedule lunch, starting at 3 hours 30 minutes after the start of the shift now that the time frame for lunch was shortened. This means EEM needs to remove the last cell as a possibility for the first break. Now it is possible for lunch to start 1 hour and 30 minutes after all the possible times the first break can end. When you finish adding all your breaks, click Submit to save the template. Let's go over a few things to keep in mind about break and lunch templates. You can only add breaks from the earliest time on a shift to the end. For example, There is a break starting 1 hour 30 minutes into the 4-hour shift, and you want to add a system start break at the beginning of the shift. You can't just add the new break at an earlier time. You have to create a new template or clear the shift by deleting all the breaks and lunches on the shift and add them back starting with the earliest break. You must assign at least one break to every shift length on a template. Once a break is created, you cannot edit the minimum shift length, maximum shift length, shift interval, break type, or break length. To edit a template, select the template you want to edit. You can create a new break as shown before. You can also delete a break by clicking on the break and then clicking the X icon. You can add a break that was previously defined by entering the name of the existing break. Click Submit to save the changes. You must assign a template to every program and site combination for schedules to be updated. However, you may not want EEM to reallocate breaks and lunches when applying schedule changes. In this case, you need to create a blank template without any breaks and lunches defined. Click Add Template. Enter the exact text, No Break and Lunch Rules, as the template name and click Submit. To delete a template, click on the trash can icon. You can only delete a template that is not assigned to a program and site combination. Now that you have created your templates, you can associate them to your program and site combinations. Before you can assign a template, you must map your activity codes on the Schedule Activity Mapping page and assign an MU to the program. You must assign a template to each program and site combination. To associate a template to a program and site combination, click the plus icon in the Association column. To edit an association, click the Edit icon in the Association column. Select a template and the grid updates with the breaks and lunches defined for the template. Each break displays below the template. Select the activity code to associate with each break from the Break Activity Code drop-down list. Select whether the template applies when agents take voluntary time off. You can also associate the template with other program and site combinations that do not already have a template assigned to them. Click Submit. Here you can see the template Weekends is now assigned to this program and site combination. For more information on break and lunch templates, refer to the Administrator User Guide and the NUG website at www.niceusergroup.org.